Welcome back to Touring History, the podcast where we prove that literally every day in the history, Yes, the
In the
history
history.
was somehow both completely bonkers and weirdly predictable. I'm Lane.
And I'm weirdly predictable Dave, still trying to figure out why we agreed to do this show when we could have just started a true crime podcast like everyone else. Ooh.
Well, because, Dave, true crime podcasts don't get to talk about medieval executions and space exploration in the same episode.
Good point.
Speaking of which, today we're touring May 30th through history, and let me tell you, this date has more drama than a reality TV reunion show.
That's right. So when astronauts bring up sort of weird things about medieval executions, you know they listen to our show. So before we dive into today's historical chaos, we want to thank our sponsors, which are Legends Athletic Wear and Jimmy's Atomic Coffee. You know what's legendary? Not having to worry about your clothes falling apart during your morning yoga situation. Unlike apparently everything else in human civilization, have a cup of Jimmy's.
I'm going to call you off-script Dave. I never know where you're going.
That's right,
I
because
just go along for the ride. What's he going to
it's
say
there.
next? I don't know, but I got to listen. Seriously, whether you're running a 5K or running from your responsibilities like I am, or running away from the script that's in front of Dave, Legends has you covered. Check them out at legends.com because looking good while sweating is basically the only victory we can guarantee you in this life.
That's right, because when I have a cup of coffee, I sweat like a banshee. And that's because I don't care. I'm wearing Legends outerwear. Now, before we get to the part where history gets weird, and trust me, it's already there, let's celebrate some May 30th birthdays.
We've got quite the musical lineup today, Dave.
Yes.
Idina Menzel was
That's
born in
right.
1971, and honestly, Let It Go has become my personal anthem every time I look at my credit card statement.
Oh, you look like a ice sculpture with a
Let
big
it
carrot
go.
nose. CeeLo Green, born in 1975, gave us Crazy, coincidentally, is also how I feel every time I research historical events for this podcast. There's also Winona Judd from 1964, because apparently May 30th was designated as People with Amazing Voices Day. Thank you very much.
Ooh, is that your birthday too, Dave?
No, but it's a plug for my voice.
Oh. And we can't forget Tom Morello, also born in 1964 on this day, proving that revolutionary guitar riffs and revolutionary politics can indeed coexist. Plus, Stephen Gerrard from 1980, who made kicking a ball look like
Huh?
actual art.
Well, who is he?
I'm guessing he kicks balls.
That's right.
He's a ball kicker, Dave.
That's right.
I didn't go any deeper in my research.
Well, I kick ass, but I don't get to be, Happy birthday to all of them, and may their lives be significantly less dramatic than what we're about to discuss. Ooh.
I think this is the 12th time we've covered this.
She's
topic.
back! That toasty gal from France, Jeanne d'Arc.
Joan of Arc. That's right. Let's start our chronological journey.
Are you
through
done
May
yet,
30th.
Joan? Oh, that's a double-ended meaning.
Oh, well done.
Well done, Lane. Well done. Well done, Joan.
We're beginning in 1431 with what is possibly history's most tragic case of things escalating quickly.
Yes. Well, Joan of Arc was burned at the stake in Rouen, France. And look, I don't want to be that guy, but maybe, just maybe, the French authorities could have considered that a teenage peasant girl claiming to hear voices from saints, I hear them again, was perhaps dealing with something that didn't require, murder by fire. Let's burn her. She's saying things I don't understand. She's speaking in English.
But Dave, this was the 15th century.
True.
Their conflict resolution strategies were basically trial by combat or trial by fire. And sometimes just skip the trial, go straight to fire.
That's right. Let's go to the barbecue. Joan had literally helped crown the Dauphin as Charles What's V22? Oh, 7. Led French forces to several victories against the English. You silly English. And her reward was being accused of heresy and witchcraft. It's always the chicks, right? Hester
Hmm.
Prynne. I mean, I read that book. What was it? The
The
Salem witch
Scarlet
trial.
Letter.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
Yeah. It's being, you know, fired for being too good at your job, except with significantly more flames involved.
Yes, yes. The really twisted part, she was
What?
later canonized as a saint in 1920, which is basically the Catholic Church's way of saying, whoopsie daisy, our bad, nearly 500 years later.
Yeah, you know what the weird thing is? During the Notre Dame fire 5 years ago, there's a statue of her there. It
Yeah?
it was intact. No
Ooh.
flames, no charring, nothing. Weird, right? I mean, nothing says we may have overacted, like posthumous sainthood and fire-free zone and a giant fire.
Jumping forward to 1911, we get to witness the birth of what would become America's obsession with watching people drive in circles really, really fast.
Well, that's an obsession. I do it all the time. The first Indianapolis 500 was held on May 30th, and Ray Harron won it in his Marmon Wasp. Huh, that was a big one. I saw one of those dealerships the other day right next to Tesla. It averaged 74.6 miles per hour. Now I realize that sounds slow by today's standards, but consider that most people in 1911 thought 20 miles an hour would cause your organs to rearrange themselves, when it now only takes 15 miles an hour.
Or a cup of Jimmy's Atomic Coffee.
That's right. I need my organs rearranged. And I also need to take a.
Don't combine with a bran muffin. Things go nuclear
It's
then.
atomic.
What's amazing is that this race was conceived as a way to test automotive technology and promote the car industry. It's like if today we decided to advance smartphone technology by making people text while riding roller coasters.
Oh, I've done that. It's bad news. Her own car had a rear view mirror. Huh. See ya! Which was revolutionary at the time. And before that, drivers apparently just looked behind them. Huh, what a concept. And hoped that nothing important was happening behind them, which explains a lot about the early 20th century traffic fatalities.
Yeah, always
Fatalities.
get always getting hit from behind. The purse was 25,000, which in 1911 money was roughly equivalent to never having to work again. Not bad for 6 hours of left turns.
It's funny how they call such a manly event, the winning thing, a purse.
Purse.
Not a satchel or a, well, I don't know, a handbag. Anyway,
Saddlebag.
that's right. Speaking of American institutions, 1922 brought us the dedication of the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. And I have to say, Lane, for a country that was only 146 years old at the time, America was already pretty good at making dramatic monuments, like that big thing behind him. You know what I'm talking about?
The monument?
Yeah, that big
Oh, yeah.
stick.
The memorial was designed by Henry Bacon, and yes, that's his real name. Apparently, destiny was calling, and it took 8 years to build. 8 years to build a memorial for a president who governed during a 4-year civil war. The irony is not lost on me.
I'll take fries with that bacon. The Statue of Liberty is something completely different than the Statue of Lincoln, which is inside, which inside is 19 feet tall and weighs 175 tons, because apparently subtle tribute wasn't in the architectural vocabulary of the 1920s.
What I love is that this was dedicated on Memorial Day, which feels
Oh,
appropriate since Lincoln basically invented the modern concept of dying for your country matters.
that's right.
Though he probably would have preferred people not having to die at all.
That's true. I mean, that was one bloody war. The inscription includes the Gettysburg Address, proving that sometimes the best speeches are really the short ones. Take note, modern politicians.
May 30th, 1935 marked the end of an era that baseball fans are still not over. Babe Ruth played his final major league game.
Wow, the Bambino, the curse of the Red Sox. He was playing for the Boston Braves, which feels like seeing Superman working as a mall security guard. I mean, Ruth was 40 years old, which in dog years and baseball years was approximately equivalent to being a Civil War veteran. I think he had a lot of debts.
Yeah, he had joined the Braves thinking he might get a chance to manage, but instead they basically used him as a publicity stunt. It's like hiring Beyonce to work at your local radio station and then being surprised when she's not thrilled about taking requests for Wonderwall.
All the singles, all the single ladies, all the. That's not how it goes, Beyonce. Ruth's final season was pretty rough. He hit 181. Well, that's basically what I hit. And looked, by all accounts, like a man who had eaten too many hot dogs and not enough vegetables for the past 20 years.
Well, that's
Oh,
probably what he was.
that's right, a vegetable.
But here's the thing about Babe Ruth. Even past his prime, he was still Babe Ruth.
That's
His
right.
career numbers were so ridiculous that baseball statisticians are still trying to figure out if he was actually human or just a really committed performance artist.
And not only that, he had a candy bar made named after him. I
Eh,
mean,
That
there's
thing
no
will clear a
Lane or David bar.
there's no candy bar that can clear a pool like a Babe Ruth.
That's so true. Zagnut. Ooh, there's one in the pool. Things take a darker turn in 1937 with what became known as Memorial Day Massacre in Chicago. And spoiler alert, it wasn't exactly a massacre in the traditional sense, but it was definitely a police brutality situation that makes you wonder if anyone learned anything from history ever. I mean, this was 1937.
Yeah, steel workers were on strike and they organized a peaceful march to the Republic Steel Plant. The Chicago police decided that peaceful march was apparently code for imminent threat to society and opened fire.
Yeah, I guess the cops in the 1968 Democratic Convention didn't get that memo. 10 people were killed, and most of them were shot in the back. Ouch, which suggests they were either retreating or running away, which is the same thing, neither of which typically constitutes a threat requiring lethal force, and they weren't even armed. Oh, dear.
The whole thing was caught on film by Paramount News, but the footage was so graphic that it wasn't shown publicly until months later. Even in 1937, people understood that police shooting fleeing workers, not great PR.
Right. That in Ohio. What's particularly infuriating is that this happened during a time when labor rights were supposedly being expanded under FDR's New Deal. Apparently, some people didn't get the memo about workers having actual rights.
The strike was about basic working conditions and fair wages. You know, those radical concepts like not dying at work and being able to afford food.
Oh, yeah, that stuff. Huh. Well, before we continue our historical tour, let's take a moment for our advertising history segment because apparently every industry has its own dramatic backstory.
That's right. On May 30th, 1972, Ted Bates passed away. And while that name might not ring a bell, his influence on advertising absolutely shaped how we're sold everything from toothpaste to presidential candidates.
That's right, Lane. Bates founded Ted Bates and Company, and he basically invented the concept of the unique selling proposition, or USP, which sounds like corporate jargon, but is actually pretty brilliant.
The idea was simple. Every product should have one clear, unique benefit that competitors can't claim. It's like dating advice, but for breakfast cereals.
Yeah, his agency gave us some of the most memorable advertising slogans ever. Here's one: M&M's melt in your mouth, not in your hand. Ha! And Wonder Bread builds strong bodies 8 ways. They tried 12 ways, but it got a little weird, which technically isn't true, but was certainly catchy.
Yeah,
Let's not
truth
put
that
those 4 other ones in there. They're really weird.
yeah, it's USP. There's no truth in USP, is there?
No, no, not at all.
Uh, Bates understood that people don't buy products, they buy solutions to problems they didn't know they had. Revolutionary stuff, really.
I need to floss? I didn't know that. Speaking of solutions to problems you didn't know you had, our friends at Legends Athletic Wear understand that your workout clothes should be an additional sort of stress. Oh, wait a minute. They shouldn't be an additional sort of stress in your life. That's right. They come with stress relieving.
Exactly. Whether you're hitting the gym or just trying to look like someone who hits the gym, Legends has performance wear that actually performs. Check them out at legends.com, where looking athletic is the first step to being athletic.
That's right.
Or or so I tell myself.
Exactly, Lane. When I'm lounging on the couch thinking about going to the gym, I throw on my Legends athletic wear because if my wife comes in the room and says, "Oh, are you going to the gym?" I just say, "I've already been." That's right. Moving into the late 1960s, May 30th, 1968 marked the beginning of what would become one of the most influential albums in music history. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. The Beatles started recording what we know as the White Album.
Officially titled The Beatles, but everyone calls it the White Album because the cover is literally just
White.
white, proving that sometimes the most revolutionary thing you can do is absolutely nothing.
That's right. They were going to call it the Black Album, but they realized nobody would find it in the rack.
They
This was
heard Spinal Tap was already going to do that.
That's right. This was peak Beatles weirdness. They had just come back from India, the Maharishi, where they had been studying with him and meditating and apparently writing songs that ranged from beautiful and profound to what were they thinking?
Yeah, the album would eventually include everything from While My Guitar Gently Weeps to Revolution 1 to Honey Pie to whatever number 9 was supposed to be. It's like they decided to record every possible type of song that could exist.
And they did, but they couldn't put it all on one album. And what's fascinating is that they were essentially four different musicians at this point. Yeah, it should have seen the writing on the wall there, all pulling in different directions, but somehow it did create this beautiful musical chaos that still sounds fresh today. It's really true. It's a great album.
Yeah, recording would continue for months,
Months.
during which the band would gradually fall apart. But in May 1968, they were still the Beatles and the world was still paying attention.
That's true. But, before we continue with our tour through May 30th history, let's hear from our sponsor.
That's right. You know what's legendary?
No.
Not having to think about whether your clothes will survive your workout.
PU.
That's where Legends athletic wear comes in.
That's right. I've been wearing Legends gear for my morning runs, and my morning runs. I mean, my frantic dashes to catch the bus is a morning run, as is my run to the bathroom when I've had some Jimmy's Atomic Coffee. And this stuff holds up, just like their pants.
Well, you can tell when Dave is going off the script because I'm trying to figure out where I come back in. Whether you're training for a marathon or just trying to look presentable while picking up groceries, Legends has you covered with performance wear that actually performs.
Yeah, and I don't even bother to look presentable or think that I do when I'm wearing Legends because I know I do. And I'm covered with more than just performance wear. I'm covered with all the stuff I ate this morning. Plus, their stuff doesn't look like you raided a gym lost and found in 1987. That's right, folks. Modern designs, quality materials, reasonable prices, and lunch for later on.
Head over to legends.com and use our show code. Just kidding. We don't have a show code.
Nah,
But seriously, check them out because
check them
life's too
out.
short for clothes that give up before you do.
That's right. So now back to our historical chaos. On to you, Lane.
Oh, thanks, Dave. On May 30th, 1971, NASA launched Mariner 9,
Ooh,
which would become the first spacecraft to orbit another planet. And honestly, this might be humanity's greatest achievement that nobody ever talks about.
it's true. Think about this. Humans looked at a red dot in the sky and said, "What is that? Let's send a robot there to take pictures." And then they actually did it. Meanwhile, I still can't figure out how to program my coffee maker with Jimmy's Atomic Coffee.
Mariner 9 arrived at Mars in November 1971 and sent
Took
back
it
over
long enough.
7,000 photos. including the first detailed images of Mars' surface. It discovered massive volcanoes, canyons, and evidence of ancient water flows.
Oh, those ancient water flows. The timing was perfect because there was a massive dust storm lane covering the entire planet when it arrived.
Mo.
Which sounds like the kind of thing that would completely ruin a modern space mission. But NASA just waited it out like cosmic meteorologists do. Well, we'll just see what happens in another hour, okay?
What gets me, honestly, is that this was 1971 technology. Like they built a robot photographer, shot it into space, and successfully got it to orbit Mars using computers less powerful than a modern calculator.
Yeah, you remember Pong on your Sony Trinitron?
It was my favorite.
That's right. Well, this was basically the same thing. And while Mariner 9 was revolutionizing our understanding of Mars, people on Earth were still arguing about whether the moon landing was real. I mean, they probably didn't even know it had gone there. I mean, humans are weird.
We are weird.
Unfortunately, 1972 also brought us one of the darker chapters of May 30th with the Lod Airport massacre in Tel Aviv, where 26 people were killed and 80 were injured in what was essentially international terrorism coming to aviation.
3 members of the Japanese Red Army, acting on behalf of the Popular Front for the liberation of Palestine, Palestine again,
Yes, never
opened
ends.
fire in the airport terminal, targeting civilian travelers.
Yes, and what's particularly disturbing about this attack is how it demonstrated the global nature of terrorism. Japanese militants attacking Israeli civilians on behalf of Palestinian organizations. I mean, wow, what a timeline. It was horrific. It was a horrific preview of how interconnected and complicated international violence would become.
Yeah, it seems like we have a pattern developing all the way back from 1972 and beyond, right?
It's true. Yep.
Someone attacking Israel on behalf of the Palestines.
Yeah, that'll never end, huh?
Most of the victims were Christian pilgrims from Puerto Rico, which
Oh.
really drives home how random and senseless this violence was. People traveling for religious purposes becoming casualties in a conflict they had nothing to do with.
That's shameful. The attack led to significant changes in airport security worldwide, basically starting the long journey toward the current state of air travel, where taking off your shoes is considered normal. Yeah.
It's one of
But
those
you
events.
forgot your belt lane.
Oh, thanks for grabbing that for me.
Yeah.
It's one of those events that changed everything while most people weren't paying attention, which seems to be a theme in history.
Well, here we go with even something that's closer to home. May 30th, 2002 marked the official end of cleanup of Ground Zero in New York City, closing a chapter that began September 11th, 2001. And honestly, I'm not sure we've ever really figured out how to talk about this properly.
Cleanup took 8 months and 19 days, during which workers removed 1.8 million tons of debris. Those are numbers that don't really convey the emotional weight, though, of what was essentially an archaeological dig through tragedy.
Whew, boy, that was a tough one. I mean, I smelled it for months. It was terrible. What struck
Mm.
me when researching this is how the cleanup became its own form of a memorial. Workers treated every piece of debris as potentially containing human remains, which it did, and which meant treating rubble with the kind of reverence usually reserved for religious artifacts.
The final piece of steel was ceremonially removed and it was sent to be turned into a ship called the USS New York. There's something both beautiful and heartbreaking about that transformation from destruction to protection.
Yes, the cleanup workers, many of whom developed health problems, even to this day from exposure to toxic dust, became heroes in their own right, though it took years for that to be officially recognized. And they are still having trouble having our government recognize that they were affected as cleanup workers by this tragedy.
It's terrible how we treat our first responders and veterans.
Yes.
It's one of those historical moments where the response to tragedy became as significant as the tragedy itself.
Well, in 2012, May 30th saw Charles Taylor, the former president of Liberia, sentenced to 50 years in prison for war crimes, and this was actually a pretty big deal for international justice. Yeah.
Yeah, Taylor was convicted of aiding and abetting war crimes in Sierra Leone's civil war, including murder, rape, and the recruitment of child soldiers. Nice guy.
Yeah.
He's the first former head of state to be convicted by an international tribunal since the Nuremberg trials.
And probably won't be the last. And what made this case particularly significant was that it established precedent for holding world leaders accountable for crimes committed in other countries. Taylor never set foot in Sierra Leone during the war, but he supported the Revolutionary United Front with weapons and training.
The trial took place at The Hague because apparently even international justice requires neutral territory, like the world's most serious sporting event.
Is that soccer? No. Taylor's defense was basically, hey, listen, I was just trying to bring peace to the region with a few arms, which is like saying you were just trying to help when you gave a flamethrower to somebody having an argument. Here you go, pal. This ought to solve your problem. Huh?
Yeah. The 50-year sentence was significant because Taylor was 64 at the time, essentially meaning life in prison.
Right.
Sometimes international justice moves slowly, but when it moves definitively.
That's right. Well, maybe not totally definitively, because
Oh,
finally we arrived at May 30th, 2024, when Donald Trump became the first former U.S. president to be convicted of felony crimes.
oh.
Yeah, which is the kind of historical first that nobody really wanted to see and didn't end up so good anyway.
Yeah, he was
Mm.
convicted on all 34 felony counts of falsifying business records in relation to hush money payments. And look, regardless of your political affiliation, former president convicted of felonies is not a sentence anyone expected to write in American history.
But hey, we got a great big 747 from Kuwait or wherever, Qatar. And yeah, it's going to be great. It's a beautiful big plane. The trial centered around payments made to adult film actress Stormy Daniels, which during the 19, not that long ago, the 2016 election, I need some more Jimmy's Atomic Coffee, which sounds like the setup to a very dark comedy that nobody wants to watch.
What's remarkable is that this happened during Trump's 2024 presidential campaign, meaning he was simultaneously running for president and being tried for felonies, which is perhaps the most American thing that has ever happened.
It's true. The conviction came from a Manhattan jury after deliberating for about 2 days, and somehow this former president and current president became the first person in that position to be convicted of crimes. Ooh.
Hmm. Each felony count carries a potential sentence of up to 4 years in prison, though legal experts suggest that as a first time offender, Trump would likely receive probation or a shorter sentence, if any jail time at all.
Yeah, that's not going to happen. It's one of those historical moments that feels simultaneously shocking and completely predictable, which might be the perfect summary of 21st century American politics.
Yep, and that's our tour through May 30th in history, a date that apparently specializes in endings, beginnings, and people making decisions that would confuse their past and future selves.
Well, from Jeanne d'Arc to Donald Trump, from the first Indy 500 to the end of Ground Zero cleanup, May 30th proves that history is just humans repeatedly figuring out new ways to be dramatic.
Before we go, one more shout out to our sponsor, Legends Athletic Wear. In a world where everything seems to fall apart eventually, like us reading our script, it's nice to have clothes that don't.
That's right. I'm wearing pieces of every I've got pieces of every part of my athletic underwear on me. I don't know what I'm saying because I've had too much Jimmy's Atomic Coffee. And, and whether you're running towards your goals or running from your problems, which I often do, legends.com has the gear that'll stick with you, just like, well, something else. Unlike apparently most of the institutions we've discussed today. Yikes.
Thanks for joining us on Touring History. I'm Lane.
And I'm the crazy person who's talking with him, Dave, still processing the fact that we live in a timeline where former presidents get convicted of felonies and don't realize it.
Until next time, remember, history is just the news that survived long enough to become respectable.
Oh, and sometimes not even that respectable. But hey, we'll be back tomorrow.
Goodbye, kids.
Bye.